Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. Today is September 25th, 2023, and so we are going to be reading Proverbs 25. I may pop back and forth. My Bible is New Living Translation as well, but sometimes the verbiage is a little bit different, but we'll go ahead and get started. So, more Proverbs of Solomon. So these are more Proverbs of Solomon collected by the advisors of King Hezekiah of Judah. It is God's privilege to conceal things and the king's privilege to discover them. No one can comprehend the height of heaven, the depth of the earth, or all that goes on in the king's mind. Remove the impurities from silver, and the sterling will be ready for the silversmith. Remove the wicked from the king's court, and his reign will be made secure by justice. Don't demand an audience with the king or push for a place among the great. It's better to wait for an invitation to the head of the table than to be sent away in public disgrace. Let me pop over to the NIV version. Sorry, guys. There we go. All right. So the NIV version, we were on verse 6, Proverbs 25:6. Do not exalt yourself in the king's presence, and do not claim a place among his great men. It is better for him to say to you, come up here, than for him to humiliate you before his nobles. What you have seen with your eyes, do not bring hastily to court. For what will you do at the end if your neighbor puts you to shame? If you take your neighbor to court, do not betray another's confidence, or the one who hears it may shame you, and the charge against you will stand. Like apples of gold in setting of silver is a ruling rightly given. Like an earring of gold or an ornament of fine gold is the rebuke of a wise judge to a listening ear. Like a snow-cooled drink at harvest time is a trustworthy messenger to the one who sends him. He refreshes the spirit of his master. Like clouds and wind without rain is one who boasts of gifts never given. Through patience, a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. If you find honey, eat just enough. Too much of it, and you will vomit. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house. Too much of you, and they will hate you. Like a club or a sword or a sharp arrow is one who gives false testimony against his neighbor. Like a broken tooth or a lame foot is reliance on the unfaithful in time of trouble. Like one who takes away a garment on a cold day, or like vinegar poured on a wound, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. Like a north wind that brings unexpected rain is a sly tongue which provokes a horrified look. Better to live in the corner of the roof than share a house with a quarrelsome wife. Like cold water to a weary soul is good news from a distant land. Like a muddied spring or a polluted well are the righteous who give way to the wicked. It is not good to eat too much honey, nor is it honorable to search out matters that are too deep. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. So that's Proverbs 25. I'm going to go through the commentary. So Proverbs 25:1 just explains Hezekiah's story. So a little bit, it says Hezekiah's story is told in 2 Kings 18 through 20, 2 Chronicles 29 through 32, and Isaiah 36 through 39. He was one of the few kings of Judah who honored the Lord. By contrast, his father Ahaz actually nailed the temple door shut. Hezekiah restored the temple, destroyed the idol worship centers, and earned the respect of surrounding nations, many of whom brought gifts to God because of him. It is not surprising that Hezekiah had these proverbs copied and read, for in everything that he undertook in the service of God's temple and in obedience to the law and the commands, he sought his God and worked wholeheartedly and so prospered. And that's from 2 Chronicles 31:21. So Proverbs 25, 6 and 7 is the next two that I have here. So there's, I'm sorry, 6 and 7 is right there. So my version, don't know if it's different yet. It says, "Do not exalt yourself in the king's presence, and do not claim a place among great men. It is better for him to say to you, 'Come up here,' than for him to humiliate you before a noble man." And so my Bible says Jesus made this proverb into a parable. See Luke 14:7-11. We should not seek honor for ourselves. It is better to quietly and faithfully accomplish the work that God has given us to do. As others notice the quality of our lives, they will draw attention to us. The next commentary is 25:13, but I actually wanted to touch on 25:8, where, okay, what you have seen with your eyes, do not bring hastily to court. Um, and for what would you do in the end if your neighbor put you to shame? And, obviously, I feel like that's all over the Bible when it talks about, judge not, least ye be judged, to the extent that you don't need to call out the faults and failures of, or the sins of, um, people around you, or what you see happening. Don't do it hastily, because we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And you have a sin, I have a sin. We're not perfect. So just being cautious and not doing it hastily. And I think that's a key word, is hastily, because we are supposed to correct each other and speak the truth in love. And there's a lot to be said about when you have a dispute with somebody and that sort of thing. But I think that the key here is just being wise about what it is, doing it hastily, and then also basically, like what Jesus says, take the plank out of your own eye. So make sure that you don't have the plank in your eye. That you shouldn't be, that could put you to shame, that you shouldn't be speaking against somebody else. So that's my perspective on that scripture. All right, so the next one is 25:13, and 25:13 says, like the coolness of snow at harvest time is a trustworthy messenger to those who send him. He refreshes the spirit of his masters. So the commentary says, it is often difficult to find people you can really trust. A faithful employee or messenger is punctual, responsible, honest, and hardworking. This person is invaluable, as he or she helps take some of the pressure off his or her employer. Find out what your employer needs from you to make his or her job easier, and do it. Okay, 25:13, like the coolness of the snow is a trustworthy messenger. Uh, he refreshes. So that's interesting. It's good commentary, because that is definitely not what I would have thought that about, in reading that scripture initially. So I appreciate that commentary. The next one is 25:14. Like clouds of wind without rain is one who boasts of gifts never given. Most churches, missions organizations, and Christian groups depend on the gifts of people to keep the ministries going, but many who promise to give fail to follow through. The Bible is very clear about the effect this has on those involved in the ministry. If you make a pledge, keep your promise. The next one is 25:18. Like a club or a sword or a sharp arrow is the man who gives false testimony against his neighbor. And lying or false testimony is vicious. Its effects can be as permanent as those of a stab wound. The next time you are tempted to pass on a bit of gossip, Imagine yourself stabbing the victim of your remarks with a sword. This image may shock you into silence. The next scripture is 25, 21, and 22. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. So I think, hopefully, for most of us, that might be a self-explanatory scripture about not paying evil for evil, but paying evil for good, turning the other cheek, that sort of thing, and letting the Lord um, deal with your enemy. But let's see what the commentary said. God's form of retaliation is most effective and yet difficult to do. Paul quotes the Proverbs in Romans 12:19 through 21. And in Matthew 4:44, in Matthew 5:44, Jesus encourages us to pray for those who hurt us. By returning good for evil, we are acknowledging God as the balancer of all accounts and trusting Him to be the judge. The next scripture is 25:26. Like a muddied spring or polluted well are the righteous who give way to the wicked. And this says to give way to the wicked means setting aside your standards of right and wrong. No one is helped by someone who compromises with the wicked. And verse 27, it is not good to eat too much honey, nor is it honorable to search out matters that are too deep. And my Bible says it is not good to eat too much honey, nor is it honorable to seek out one's own honor. And I kind of like that version better than matters that are too deep, because I feel like, from my perspective, what this is saying is that we shouldn't be seeking out when our own reward or our own honor when we do something well. Let me read the commentary on it. Dwelling on the honors you deserve can only be harmful. It can make you bitter, discouraged, or angry, and it will not bring you the rewards that you think should be yours. Thinking, or dwelling over them or what you should have received may make you miss the satisfaction knowing that you did your best. So yeah, I think that's a good one. In the way it's written in my study Bible, again, because it's about not seeking to try to get the recognition or prize or honor that you think you deserve when you've done a good job, but because you focus on that and you lose the satisfaction of a job well done within yourself and within your character. And then the last scripture is verse 28. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. This says, even though city walls restricted the inhabitants' movements, people were happy to have them. Without walls, they would have been vulnerable to attack by any passing group of martyrs. Yeah, martyrs, it looks like. So self control limits us, to be sure, but it is necessary, as an out of control life is open to all sorts of enemy attack. Think of self control as a wall for defense and protection. So I think that that's a good commentary there. Thinking of self control as that wall of defense or protection, and not being in control can just open you up to so many different attacks of the enemy. So that's Proverbs 25. I appreciate everybody following along today, and everybody have a great night.